I never thought grief could taste so bitter. My name is Madison Carter, and on the day of my billionaire father's funeral, I learned that death doesn't just steal the ones we love, it unmasks the monsters left behind. As the church bells tolled, their somber chimes echoing through the stained glass windows, my stepmother, Vanessa, stood at the altar, her black veil barely concealing a smile sharper than any blade. With trembling hands, a performance polished to perfection, she waved a will in front of hundreds of mourners and declared that my father had left her everything: his business empire, his vast fortune, and the crown jewel of our family, our $9 billion mansion. Then, as if the polished mahogany coffin behind her wasn't proof enough of our loss, she turned to me and my younger brother, Tyler, and ordered us out of our own home. The crowd gasped, a collective breath of shock. Tyler's eyes brimmed with fear, his hands shaking in mine. But me? I laughed, because Vanessa had no idea about the secret that mansion was hiding. A truth buried deeper than she could ever dig. The church was cloaked in heavy silence, broken only by the faint crackle of tall candles burning beside my father's coffin, their wax pooling like tears on the marble floor. The scent of lilies hung thick in the air, cloying and suffocating. I stood rigid in the front pew, clutching Tyler's trembling fingers. At just 21, my brother was far too young to stand in the shadow of such betrayal. His knuckles white, his lips pressed so tight they'd lost all color. We were two children mourning our father, watching his legacy stolen in broad daylight. Vanessa glided to the podium, her black dress sweeping across the floor like a dark tide. She was beautiful in a cruel, calculated way. Perfect blonde hair pinned neatly, a diamond necklace catching the chandelier's light, and crocodile tears sliding down her cheeks, never quite reaching her cold, glittering eyes. She sniffled into a silk handkerchief, then raised a thick envelope, the crisp sound of paper against the microphone echoing like a gunshot. "My late husband," she began, her voice breaking just enough to seem rehearsed, "entrusted me with his final wishes. In this document, signed and notarized, Richard Carter bequeaths his entire estate, his companies, his fortune, and the Carter mansion, to me, his devoted wife." A murmur rippled through the congregation. Some gasped, others exchanged looks of disbelief. Tyler's body stiffened against mine, his breath catching in his throat. "No," he whispered hoarsely, the word barely audible. "She's lying. Dad would never do this." I squeezed his hand tighter. My eyes locked on Vanessa. She wasn't done. "As of today," she continued, her voice now steady and commanding, "the Carter estate belongs to me. I will protect it, nurture it, and ensure Richard's vision lives on under my care." Her gaze swept the room before settling on me, a faint, victorious smile curling the corner of her mouth. Then she pointed a manicured finger in our direction. "As for Madison and Tyler," she said, her tone syrupy sweet but dripping with venom, "Richard loved you both, but the future must be practical. You are no longer welcome at the mansion. The household will be reorganized immediately. Please respect his wishes." Her words lashed across my chest like a whip. For a moment, the church seemed to tilt, the stained glass windows blurring in my vision. Tyler's knees buckled slightly, his fingers digging into my arm as he whispered, "Maddie, what do we do? She's throwing us out." Behind us, the crowd buzzed with scandal, whispers stinging like wasps. Some looked at us with pity, others turned away, too cowardly to intervene. I raised my chin, forcing my lips into a cold smile. My heart thundered, fury burning through my veins. But I refused to let Vanessa see me break. What she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that my father was far wiser than she gave him credit for. He hadn't just left behind a house or a fortune, he'd left secrets. Safeguards, truths hidden in places she'd never think to look. And then, in the suffocating silence of the church, I did the one thing no one expected. I laughed. The sound sliced through the stillness like shattering glass. Vanessa's smile froze, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. In that moment, I made a silent vow. She could wave her forged papers, lock every door in that mansion, but the Carter legacy would never belong to her. It belonged to us. As Tyler and I stepped out of the church, The crisp Virginia air hit my face like a slap. Reporters swarmed at the gate. Cameras flashing. Their voices rising above the hum of traffic. "Miss Carter, is it true your stepmother now owns the estate?" I ignored them, gripping Tyler's hand as we pushed through the chaos. The black limousine Vanessa had promised to send for us was nowhere in sight. Of course not. She hadn't arranged for our return. She'd arranged for our exile. We stood abandoned on the church steps. Our father buried inside. Our home stolen before our eyes. Tyler looked at me, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. "Maddie, do you remember when Dad used to walk us through the garden at night? The roses, the fountains, it never felt like just a house. It felt alive." His words pulled me back in time. I could still see the Carter mansion rising from the hillside like a castle carved from light, $9 billion worth of marble, glass, and history. But to me, as a child, it was never about the price tag. It was my father's steady hand on my shoulder. His deep voice saying, "A home isn't built with stone, Madison. It's built with love, and it's your duty to protect it." I remembered racing down the grand staircase, my shoes clicking against polished oak as my mother's laughter floated from the kitchen. I remembered Tyler at the piano in the music room, his small fingers fumbling at first, then soaring into melodies that made our parents beam with pride. That house held everything. The scent of Mom's perfume lingering in the halls. The echo of Dad's footsteps after late meetings. The crackle of the fireplace when storms battered the windows. It was a fortress of memories. A vault of love. And now Vanessa wanted to strip it bare. Turning rose gardens into cold sculptures. Family portraits into dust-covered relics. To her, it was a trophy. To us, it was our heart. Tyler's voice broke through my thoughts. "I can't lose it, Maddie. It's the only place that still feels like Mom and Dad." I crouched to meet his gaze. "Listen to me, Tyler. A piece of paper can't erase who we are. That mansion isn't just walls and windows, it's us. And I won't let her destroy it." A flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. Fragile but real. We hailed a cab and headed toward the estate. As we approached, the mansion's pale stone walls gleamed under the sunset, its tall windows reflecting fire across the gardens. For a moment, I felt the old warmth of home. But as the iron gates loomed closer, so did the shadows of guards in black suits, Vanessa's sentinels, already stationed to protect her stolen kingdom. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass of the taxi window and whispered, "This is still our house. She can lock the doors, change the keys, parade her fake papers, but one day, Tyler and I will walk through those gates again, not as guests, not as strangers, but as the rightful heirs." The taxi pulled away from the Carter mansion, its iron gates shrinking in the rearview mirror. But the image of those black-suited guards burned into my mind. Tyler sat beside me, staring out the window, his silence heavier than the Virginia dusk settling around us. I could still hear Vanessa's voice, dripping with venom, ordering us out of our own home, and the smug curl of her lips as she waved her so-called will. But her victory was a house of cards, and I was already planning to tear it down. The mansion wasn't just stone and glass, it was the heart of our family. And I'd fight to my last breath to take it back. As the cab wound through the rolling hills, I made a silent promise to my father. Vanessa would never wear his legacy like a crown. Not while I was still standing. We ended up at a motel on the edge of town. A faded neon sign flickering, vacancy, above the cracked asphalt lot. The room smelled of stale coffee and mildew. A far cry from the polished oak and rose-scented halls of home. Tyler dropped onto the sagging bed, his hands covering his face. "Maddie, how did this happen?" he whispered. "How could Dad let her do this?" I sat beside him, my own chest tight with grief and fury. "He didn't, Tyler. That's what she doesn't get. Dad was smarter than her. He wouldn't leave us with nothing." My voice was steady, but inside, doubt gnawed at me. What if Vanessa's will was real? What if Dad had changed his mind in his final days? I pushed the thoughts away. No, I knew my father. He'd built that mansion for Mom. For us. For love. Vanessa was a thief. And I'd prove it. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mansion, its grand staircase, The music room where Tyler played. The garden where Mom's roses bloomed. I saw Vanessa's manicured hands tearing it all apart, replacing our memories with her cold ambition. By morning, my resolve had hardened into something sharp and unyielding. I called Mr. Sullivan, one of Dad's oldest friends and a partner at Carter & Company, his voice crackling through the motel's spotty reception. "Madison," he said, low and weary, "I was waiting for your call." My heart skipped. "You know something, don't you? You know she's lying." There was a long pause. Then a sigh. "I can't say much over the phone. Meet me at the old Carter & Company headquarters at noon." Tyler and I arrived at the towering marble building just as the sun hit its peak, casting long shadows across the plaza. Sullivan waited by the entrance, leaning on his cane, his face etched with grief but his eyes burning with quiet determination. He gripped my hand tightly. "Your father loved you both. Don't ever doubt that. And he didn't trust Vanessa, not fully." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Sullivan glanced around, lowering his voice. "Months before he got sick, he suspected she might try something. That's why he created a trust." I frowned. The word unfamiliar in this context. "A trust?" Sullivan nodded. "He had his lawyer, Harold Green, draft a confidential document. The mansion, most of the estate, it was all moved into the Carter family trust, with you and Tyler as the beneficiaries." My heart slammed against my ribs. "So Vanessa's will, it's fake? Or signed under pressure?" Sullivan's expression darkened. "Either way, it doesn't override the trust. If you can find it, if Green still has the records, you'll have proof." Tyler's voice trembled. "Why didn't Dad tell us? Why keep it secret?" Sullivan's gaze softened. "He wanted to protect you. He thought if Vanessa didn't know, she couldn't tamper with it. But she's clever. She fired most of the old staff, hired her own lawyers. I'm afraid she might have buried it." I clenched my fists, hope and fury surging together. "Then we dig it up." Sullivan placed a hand on my shoulder. "Be careful, Madison. Vanessa's ruthless. And she's got money and connections. But your father trusted you. That's your strength." As we left the headquarters, Tyler grabbed my arm, his eyes wide. "Maddie, if this is true, everything changes. She can't touch the mansion, it's ours." I stopped, turning to face him. "Not just ours, Tyler. Dad built that house for Mom. For us. For the Carter name. To Vanessa, it's a trophy. To us, it's sacred. And I swear, we're taking it back." A faint smile broke through his fear. The first I'd seen since the funeral. "Then let's fight." That evening, I called Harold Green's office. The secretary hesitated before transferring me, her voice clipped and nervous. When Green finally answered, his tone was low and tired. "Madison Carter? I've been expecting you." My stomach twisted. "Mr. Green, it's about my father." Mr. Sullivan mentioned a trust, one that names Tyler and me as beneficiaries. A long pause. Then another sigh. "Meet me tomorrow morning. There's something you need to see." Adrenaline surged through me as I hung up. Vanessa thought she'd locked every door. But Dad had left one open, the trust, and I was ready to walk through it. The next morning, Tyler and I arrived at a modest downtown office building. Its brass plaque reading, Harold Green, attorney at law. My palms were damp as I pushed open the door. Green had been Dad's legal confidant for over 20 years. If anyone knew the truth, it was him. He waited behind a mahogany desk stacked with folders, his silver hair catching the morning light. His sharp eyes softened when he saw us. "Madison, Tyler," he said warmly, shaking our hands. "Your father spoke of you often. I'm so sorry for your loss." I sat across from him, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Green, Vanessa claims she has a will leaving everything to her. But Sullivan told us about a trust, one that protects Tyler and me. Is it true?" Green leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. "It's true. I drafted the Carter family trust myself, under Richard's explicit instructions. The mansion, most of his estate, it was secured for you both." His brow furrowed. "But the original documents vanished from my records months before your father passed." My stomach dropped. "Vanished? You mean stolen?" Green nodded grimly. "That's my suspicion. Vanessa replaced your father's loyal staff with her own people. I wouldn't put it past her to have intercepted the files. Tyler's voice cracked. So we have nothing? Green's eyes flashed. Not nothing. I always keep backups. I've been searching for them. But we'll need more evidence to convince a court, witnesses. Financial records. Proof that Richard was coerced. I leaned forward, my voice sharp. Where do we start? Green's gaze met mine, steady and resolute. Start with the people who knew your father best. His housekeeper, Clara, might know something. She was let go shortly before he died. That night, we drove to a quiet neighborhood on the city's outskirts. Clara had agreed to meet us at a small park. Her silhouette small and fragile under the streetlights. She looked thinner than I remembered. Her eyes tired, but they lit up when she saw us. Oh, my dears, she said, pulling us into a hug. I wanted to reach out, but Vanessa made it impossible. I took her hand gently. Clara, did you ever see her pressure Dad? Anything strange? She hesitated, glancing around as if the shadows might be listening. Then whispered, yes. Her voice trembled as she recounted a night weeks before Dad's death. I overheard Vanessa on the phone with a lawyer I didn't recognize. She was talking about handling the paperwork. Later, I found your father in his study, pale and confused, signing documents while she hovered over him. When I offered him water, she snapped at me to leave. Tyler's jaw tightened. She forced him when he was sick. Clara nodded. I believe so, but I had no proof. When I confronted her, she fired me the next day. I squeezed her hand. Your words are proof enough. Clara, thank you. As we drove back to the motel, Tyler's voice was quiet but fierce. Maddie, we're building something here. We're going to stop her. I looked at him, my heart pounding. No, Tyler, we're not just building a case. We're building a war, and Vanessa has no idea what's coming. The motel room felt smaller with every passing hour. Its peeling wallpaper and flickering lamp a constant reminder of how far we'd fallen. Tyler sat cross-legged on the bed, his eyes fixed on a crumpled photo of Mom and Dad he'd salvaged from his wallet. Their smiles frozen in a happier time. My own thoughts churned like a storm, replaying Clara's words, Sullivan's warning, and Green's cautious hope about the trust. Vanessa thought she'd buried our father's legacy along with him. But every lead we uncovered was a crack in her armor. I wasn't just fighting for a mansion, I was fighting for the truth. For Mom's roses, for Dad's voice echoing through the halls. This was war, and I was ready to draw blood. The next morning, Tyler and I returned to Harold Green's office, the weight of Clara's testimony fueling our steps. The attorney greeted us with a nod. His desk now cluttered with more files, as if he'd spent the night digging through decades of secrets. Clara's statement is a start, he said, his voice steady but urgent. But we need more, something undeniable. A witness, a document, anything that proves Vanessa coerced your father. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of his desk. What about the nurse who cared for Dad in his final weeks? She saw him sign papers when he was barely conscious. Green's eyes lit up. If she'll testify, that could be a game changer. But nurses are cautious, they fear legal backlash. You'll need to convince her. Finding the nurse wasn't easy. After hours of calls to hospitals and care facilities, I tracked down her name, Eleanor Hayes, and a phone number. Her voice trembled when she answered. Hesitant but kind. Miss Carter, I can't get involved, she said. I could lose my job. I pressed gently, my voice steady despite the desperation clawing at me. Eleanor, my father was a good man. He didn't deserve to be manipulated in his final days. You saw what Vanessa did. Please, help us. There was a long pause. Then a shaky sigh. I'll meet you, off the record, tomorrow at the cafe on Elm Street. The cafe was a quiet spot, its windows fogged with steam from brewing coffee. Eleanor sat in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a mug, her face pale and drawn. She was older than I'd expected, her gray hair tucked into a neat bun, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much. Your father was kind, she began softly, even when he was fading. He'd ask about my kids, my life, but Vanessa, she shook her head. She was always there, hovering, bringing stacks of papers. He was so weak, sometimes barely awake. I saw him sign things. But I don't think he knew what they were. She'd guide his hand, whispering it was for the family. I tried to speak up once. But she threatened to have me fired. Tyler's fists clenched under the table. She used him, he muttered. Eleanor nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I'm sorry I didn't do more. I reached across the table, touching her hand. You're doing something now. That's what matters. By the time we left, Eleanor had agreed to provide a written statement. A small but vital piece of our growing arsenal. Back at Green's office, we handed over her account. And he scribbled notes furiously. This is good, he said. But we need something tangible, financial records. A paper trail, or that trust document itself. Vanessa's lawyers are sharks. They'll tear apart anything less than ironclad. That night, I couldn't shake the image of Dad in his study. Pale and confused, Vanessa looming over him like a vulture. Tyler sensed my restlessness and sat beside me on the motel bed. Maddie, what if we can't find the trust? What if she's burned it or hidden it somewhere we'll never look? I turned to him, my voice fierce. Then we keep digging until there's nowhere left for her to hide. Dad didn't raise us to give up. He nodded, but his eyes were shadowed with doubt. I hated seeing him like this, my little brother, who used to fill the mansion with music, now reduced to a motel room and a fading photograph. The next day, we drove back to the mansion. Not to confront Vanessa but to reclaim something, anything, that belonged to our parents. I wanted Dad's watch, the leather-bound journal he kept in his study, maybe one of Mom's framed photographs. Just a piece of them to hold onto when the world felt empty. Tyler hesitated as we approached the gates. His voice small. What if she doesn't let us in? I met his gaze. Then we find another way. But I won't let her erase them. The mansion stood as regal as ever. Its pale stone walls glowing in the afternoon sun. But the warmth was gone. Guards in black suits patrolled the grounds, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. The iron gates, once a welcoming arch to our childhood, now felt like prison bars. I rolled down the car window and addressed the nearest guard. I'm Madison Carter. This is my brother, Tyler. We're here to collect personal belongings from our father's study. The guard didn't flinch. No entry. Orders from Mrs. Carter. Tyler leaned forward, his voice cracking. But that's our home. We grew up here. The second guard stepped closer. Step back, kid. It's not your home anymore. My chest tightened, anger burning through me. I pushed open the car door and stood tall. Listen carefully, I said, my voice sharp but controlled. This house was built by Richard Carter. My mother's roses bloomed in that garden long before Vanessa set foot here. You don't get to tell me it's not my home. The guards exchanged a glance but didn't budge. And then, like a scene from a twisted play, Vanessa appeared on the mansion steps. Her 17-year-old daughter, Chloe, at her side. Madison, Vanessa called, her voice dripping with false sympathy. You need to move on. Clinging to the past won't help. I clenched my fists. I don't want your fake will or the fortune. Vanessa, I just want my father's keepsakes, his watch, his journal, Mom's photograph. You can't take those from us. She descended the steps, Chloe trailing with a smirk plastered across her face. Vanessa stopped at the gate, her eyes glinting. Everything inside belongs to me now. If you want something, go through my lawyer. I nearly laughed. You're hiding behind paperwork to keep a daughter from her father's watch? Chloe leaned against the gate, her tone mocking. Why don't you two just accept it? Dad didn't want you. He wanted us. Tyler gasped, his face flushing with humiliation. Before I could stop myself, I stepped closer, my voice trembling with rage. Say that again, Chloe. Her smirk faltered, but Vanessa pulled her back gently. Don't waste your breath, Madison, she said, her tone now steel beneath the sugar. You've lost. The sooner you accept it, the easier this will be. Tyler tugged at my sleeve, his voice breaking. Maddie, let's go. I turned back to the mansion one last time. Movers were hauling out Mom's antique vases, carelessly tossing bubble wrap over them. The rose garden was gone, replaced with sterile gravel. It wasn't just theft, it was desecration. As we walked back to the car, I whispered under my breath, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Vanessa's smile twitched. Just for a moment. And I knew she heard me. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the flickering lamp. Tyler dozed fitfully beside me, clutching Mom and Dad's photo. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's smug face, Chloe's sneer, the gates slamming shut, but Clara's testimony, Eleanor's statement, and the promise of the trust fueled a fire in me. Vanessa thought the funeral was her victory, but it was only the opening shot in my war. And I was ready to fight dirty. The days blurred into a relentless grind of phone calls, meetings, and late-night strategy sessions in our dingy motel room. Tyler and I pored over documents with Harold Green, piecing together a mosaic of evidence that painted Vanessa as the manipulator she truly was. Clara's testimony, Eleanor's account, they were the human threads weaving through the cold facts of the trust. But Vanessa wasn't idle. Whispers reached us of her lawyers digging into our past, looking for dirt to sling in court. The mansion loomed in my dreams, its gates mocking me, but each new lead fueled my fire. This wasn't just about reclaiming a house, it was about justice. About honoring Dad's wisdom and Mom's gentle spirit. Vanessa had stolen our peace, but she wouldn't steal our fight. Green warned us it wouldn't be easy. Vanessa's team is top tier, he said, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light of his office. They'll attack every angle, question your motives, Dad's mental state, even the trust's validity. I nodded, my jaw set. Let them try. We have the truth. Tyler, quieter but growing stronger, added, and we have each other. As the court date approached, I felt the weight of it all pressing down. But it only sharpened my resolve. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the motel window, watching rain streak the glass, remembering Dad's words. Protect them always. They are my legacy. I whispered into the storm. I will, Dad, for you, for Mom, for Tyler. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, the air thick with anticipation. Tyler sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, his leg bouncing nervously under the oak surface. Across the aisle, Vanessa and Chloe sat in sleek black suits, their expressions a mask of calm superiority. Vanessa's lawyer, a sharp-featured man named Whitaker, shuffled papers with the confidence of someone used to winning. Chloe chewed gum lazily, her eyes flicking to Tyler with a daring glare. I squeezed my brother's hand. Whatever happens, we fight to the end. He nodded, swallowing hard. For Dad, for Mom. When the judge entered, a stern woman with wire-rimmed glasses, the room rose in unison. My heart thundered, but I kept my shoulders squared. This was the moment we'd clawed towards since the funeral, the battlefield where truths would clash. Whitaker opened smoothly, his voice polished and persuasive. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Richard Carter, of sound mind, left his entire estate to his devoted wife, Vanessa Carter. This will is notarized, witnessed, and valid. The children, while grieving, are unfortunately driven by emotion. They seek to overturn a document that reflects their father's true wishes. He passed the will to the judge, who scanned it briefly before setting it aside. Then Green rose, his voice calm but laced with steel. Your Honor, what opposing counsel omits is that this will surface only after Richard Carter's health declined sharply. We have witnesses attesting he was weak, often incoherent, with Vanessa controlling every interaction in his final weeks. He gestured to me. My stomach flipped, but I stood tall and approached the witness stand. The wood cool under my fingers. Miss Carter, Green began gently, describe what happened at your father's funeral. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. Vanessa produced this will before hundreds, claiming Dad left her everything. Then she ordered Tyler and me out of our childhood home. No mementos. No keepsakes. Just grief and humiliation. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Vanessa's eyes bored into me. But I held firm. Green continued, based on your relationship with your father, do you believe he'd disinherit you? I steadied my voice. Never. He taught us integrity, responsibility. The mansion wasn't about wealth, it was our family's heart. He'd never hand it to someone who married him late in life. Whitaker objected sharply. Speculation. Your Honor. The judge sustained it. Stick to facts. Miss Carter. I sat down, my gaze meeting Tyler's. His hands shook, but his eyes gleamed with resolve. Clara testified next, her voice trembling but clear as she described overhearing Vanessa's suspicious phone call and seeing Dad sign papers while barely awake. She snapped at me to leave. Clara said, her eyes welling. It wasn't right, the gallery murmured. Then Eleanor took the stand. Her nurse's scrubs a stark contrast to the courtroom's formality. He didn't know what he was signing, she said, her voice cracking. Vanessa guided his hand. He looked lost. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, her composure cracking for the first time. Her jaw tightening as Chloe whispered urgently in her ear. But the real turning point came when Green produced a small USB drive from his folder. My pulse raced. I knew what it held. Your Honor, Green announced, his voice rising with conviction. This contains a digital backup of the Carter Family Trust, stored on secure company servers, notarized and timestamped before Richard Carter fell ill. Whitaker leapt up. Outrageous. Unverified. The judge held up a hand. We'll examine it. The clerk plugged in the drive, projecting the document onto the screen. Carter Family Trust Agreement. Beneficiaries: Madison Carter and Tyler Carter. My breath caught. Tyler squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. The judge leaned forward, reading silently. This appears legitimate. Dated 18 months prior to Mr. Carter's death. Green's voice thundered. This trust supersedes any subsequent will, especially one created under duress. Richard Carter's intent was to secure his children's inheritance, not surrender it to Vanessa. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Vanessa shot to her feet, her mask shattering. No, she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. This is mine. Richard promised me everything. He loved me, not them. Her words sliced the air like shards of glass. Chloe tugged at her arm, hissing, Mom, stop. But Vanessa's fury spilled over. Her face twisted in rage. I stood, my voice cutting through the chaos. You didn't just steal our home. You stole our last moments with Dad. You poisoned his days with lies and greed. That's something you'll never escape. Vanessa, not with all the diamonds in the world. The gallery buzzed louder, some clapping before the bailiff demanded silence. The judge banged her gavel. Order, order in the court. She waited for quiet, then fixed her gaze on Vanessa. The evidence is compelling. The will presented is invalid. The Carter Family Trust stands. The estate, including the $9 billion mansion, belongs to Madison and Tyler Carter. Tyler's head dropped into his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I pulled him close, my own tears blurring the lights. These weren't tears of grief anymore, they were of victory, of release. Across the aisle, Vanessa collapsed into her chair, pale and trembling. Chloe sat frozen, her gum forgotten, her smirk vanished. As the gavel struck one final time, a weight lifted from my chest. For the first time since Dad's death, I could breathe. This wasn't just a legal win, it was vindication for Dad's foresight. For Mom's memory, for the Carter name. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but I held Tyler's hand and pushed through. Miss Carter, how does it feel to win back your family's legacy? One shouted. I paused, looking back at the building. It feels like justice, I said simply, but inside, it felt like home calling us back. The day after the verdict, Tyler and I stood before the mansion gates once more. This time, they swung open wide, no guards barring our way. No Vanessa smirking from the steps. Only the soft creak of iron and the whisper of wind through the gardens. I stepped onto the stone path, my heels echoing like they had in childhood dreams. The mansion loomed above, sunlight dancing on its pale walls. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like a prison, it felt alive. Inside the mansion, dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through the tall windows, casting a golden haze over the grand foyer. The air was stale, laced with the faint scent of neglect. But beneath it lingered echoes of our past, the subtle floral notes from Mom's favorite candles. The polished wood that Dad had insisted on maintaining himself. Tyler wandered ahead, his footsteps echoing softly on the marble floor, while I paused at the threshold, letting the reality sink in. We were home, not as intruders or beggars, But as owners, as heirs, the court had stripped Vanessa of her illusions. And now the mansion stood silent, waiting for us to breathe life back into it. But victory tasted bittersweet, the house felt hollow, stripped of its soul by her greedy hands. We moved through the rooms like ghosts revisiting old haunts. In the living room, half-packed boxes cluttered the space. Family heirlooms tossed carelessly inside. Mom's antique vases, once proudly displayed on the mantel, were wrapped in bubble wrap, ready to be shipped off or sold. Tyler picked one up gently, his fingers tracing the delicate porcelain. She was going to get rid of all this, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. But she didn't. We stopped her. We continued to Dad's study. The heart of the house where he'd spent countless evenings poring over business plans or reading to us from his leather-bound journal. The desk was bare, drawers emptied, but hidden beneath a stack of discarded papers in a forgotten corner. I found it, the journal. Its cover was worn from years of use. The pages filled with Dad's bold handwriting. Notes on life. Memories of Mom. Advice for Tyler and me. One line jumped out. Protect them always. They are my legacy. I clutched it to my chest, whispering, we did, Dad. We kept the promise. Tyler appeared in the doorway, his eyes wet but shining. So, what now? Do we just live here again? I looked around the room, the faded wallpaper, the empty shelves, the ghosts in every shadow. Living here as before felt impossible. The scars of betrayal ran too deep. No, I said softly, a new idea taking shape. This house isn't meant to be a cage for our pain. If we lock it away, it'll rot with memories. But if we open it up, it can heal, not just us, but others. His brow furrowed. Open it to who? I smiled through my tears. To the world. To kids who've lost everything. Like we almost did. To artists, musicians, dreamers who need a place to belong. We'll turn this mansion into something greater. The Carter Foundation House. A beacon of hope, built on love. For a long moment, Tyler stared at me, processing the vision. Then he laughed quietly, shaking his head. That sounds exactly like Mom. She would have loved turning this place into a sanctuary. I nodded, gripping his hand. And Dad too. He always said a legacy isn't in money, it's in what you give to others. The idea ignited something in us both. A spark of purpose amid the ashes of grief. We spent the rest of the day exploring, cataloging what needed repair, dreaming aloud about transformations. The music room, with its grand piano, could host workshops for young musicians. The library, once Dad's quiet retreat, could open to the public with books on art and literature in Mom's honor. The gardens, the gardens, would bloom again with her roses. A space for reflection and growth. Weeks later, the transformation began in earnest. We hired gardeners to replant Mom's roses, their petals unfurling like symbols of renewal. Volunteers arrived, drawn by the story that had splashed across headlines. Carter heirs reclaim mansion. Vow to turn it into community haven. Children's laughter soon replaced the echoing silence as we hosted our first events. Tyler led music workshops in the grand hall, his fingers dancing over the piano keys as he guided a group of kids through simple melodies. One boy, no older than 10, with wide eyes and tentative hands, reminded me so much of Tyler at that age. Like this? The boy asked, pressing a key. Tyler smiled. Exactly. Now, feel the music. Let it tell your story. Watching them, my heart swelled. This was Dad's legacy alive. Not in bank accounts, but in shared joy. I organized scholarships and leadership programs, channeling Dad's lessons of integrity into classrooms we built in the East Wing. Artists painted murals on the walls, turning blank spaces into vibrant tapestries of hope and resilience. On opening day, I stood on the balcony overlooking the courtyard, the sun warm on my face. Dozens of children played tag where Chloe had once sneered at us, their giggles mingling with the fountain's gentle splash. Volunteers set up easels and instruments, the air buzzing with creativity. Tyler sat at the piano, the little boy from the workshop now playing a halting but heartfelt tune beside him. The mansion pulsed with life. Not the cold ambition Vanessa had imposed, but the warm, Enduring love we'd fought to preserve. In the breeze, I swore I heard Mom's soft laugh. Dad's steady voice approving our choices. Protect them always, I whispered into the wind. We did it. We kept the promise. When I opened my eyes, Tyler stood beside me, holding Dad's journal. He looked stronger now, his shoulders squared, his smile genuine and unshadowed. We turned the mansion into something they'd be proud of, he said. I placed a hand on his shoulder. No, Tyler, we turned it into something we can be proud of too. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the Carter Foundation house, I knew Vanessa's attempts to steal from us had failed utterly. Wealth could be contested, houses locked away, but love, the kind that builds legacies, endures. It grows, it shares, it heals. In the end, our war wasn't won in courtrooms alone, but in the quiet acts of reclaiming and giving back. The mansion, once a symbol of loss, now stood as a testament to resilience. Its doors open wide to all who needed shelter. And in that openness, we found our true home.